Hey guys, I recently found part 2 to the scuba diving story I posted several months back. It's the conclusion to the story, and I know most of you were asking me when I was going to post this. I hope you all enjoy the finish to this amazing story. I will leave the link to the first part in the description below. Even if you watched the first part in the past, I suggest going back and watching it again before you listen to this. Thanks again for all the positive comments and love and support you all give me each and every day. The Sinful Society is growing stronger by the day, and I can't wait to see how big we can get in the upcoming year as well. Sit back, relax, stay sinful. On the boat back to land, I found myself debating if I ought to tell Mark about what I'd seen in the wreck. Then I found myself debating if I'd actually seen what I thought I'd seen. None of what had happened down there made sense. How could we have gotten separated like that? There was one hallway and we were only a few feet apart for a matter of seconds, so how? In the end, I decided that it must have been a hallucination or something, and kept my mouth shut. We got back to shore without incident. Mark said something about maybe taking a nap, or possibly heading back home after what had happened. I said the hell with that. Nothing happened. Something almost happened, but nothing happened, and the sun was shining and the skies were clear. And besides, something about watching those foam-capped waves crashing over the beach, something about that drew me back to the depths. I asked Mark what he thought about a little free diving. He said, and I quote, "Fuck yeah." Now, free diving is a little different from scuba diving. Since you aren't breathing compressed air or anything at all for that matter, there's a very low chance of getting the bends or puncturing a lung due to the rapid ascent or anything. That said, it's still a dangerous sport. Possibly more so than scuba diving. I can hold my breath for a good 3 minutes when I'm underwater, but it's hard to keep track of how long you've been down when you're checking out reefs or animals. Other than that, if you get trapped or in trouble, it's all too easy to drown. Diving with a buddy is an absolute necessity, and you always follow the one up, one down rule. One guy down, one guy on the surface at all times, so that if one gets in trouble, the other can come to save him. At least that's the theory, and we had to make doubly sure to follow it now, especially since the sun was starting to set. Whatever, it was safe enough. There are plenty of people on the shore, and besides the current was toward shore anyway, I wasn't worried about anything. We made our way onto an outlying pier, hopped over a security gate or two, put on our fins, and then it was back into the water. After surface swimming for a bit, we found a series of small reefs just 40 or 50 feet below the surface. Started to take turns exploring the coral walls. It was pretty typical for the area. There were anglish, 1 or 2 baby groupers, maybe a passing parrotfish here or there. At one point I found myself kind of sitting in front of a little cave, entranced by a tiny white and black striped fish that I later learned was a juvenile jackknife fish. I spent a minute down there, maybe 2, before I looked up. Mark grabbed me almost literally by the scruff of my neck and started to pull me up. I shook free and looked at him like, dude, what's wrong? When he realized that I was conscious, he pointed to the surface and we both swam up at best speed. There was a lot of a surge, a lot of waves when we got up. I had a tough time breathing, even while using my snorkel. And, what the hell? I bellowed just before a wave crashed over me. It was dark. So dark that it took me a second to figure out what direction was up. I struggled back to the surface and turned on my flashlight. What happened? When did it get so dark? When you were down there, Mark said. He had his light on too and pointed at the sky. The clouds rolled in. But how did you stay down there that long? I thought you were a goner for sure. I must have tried to come and grab you 3, 5 times, maybe. What are you talking about? I shouted. Another wave came, but I managed to stay on top of it. Mark vanished, and I spent a frantic moment searching for him before he resurfaced not far from me. I was down for maybe 2 minutes, I said. I can't hold my breath for much longer than that. No way, man, Mark said, shaking his head. He pointed at the horizon, and though there was some cloud cover, I could see that the sun had set, and probably a good bit of time ago, too. It wasn't even dusk when we started, Mark said. You were down for at least 20 minutes. I almost left you, man. I looked at the horizon at the final rays of twilight piercing the clouds and shook my head. Whatever, I said. Let's get back to shore. Mark nodded, and we both began to swim for the glimmering light on the edge of the pier we dived from. But the current had changed. Where it might have once pushed us toward shore, now it actively pulled us away from shore. If you've ever swam against a current, you know how exhausting it can be. And the worst thing about it is that you rest for 1 second. 1 second. You can waste a good minute's worth of effort. Mark was doing okay, but I'm not the strongest swimmer. After about half an hour, we were still a good 100 or so yards from the pier. At that point, I had to think without letting myself get swept out to sea. I could try to swim parallel to the beach, which is the first thing they teach you to do if you get stuck in a rip current. But I could see the debris was floating. That was no good. I could try to swim to the pier's subsurface, but the current was just as bad, if not worse. I could try to grab onto Mark, but doing that might doom us both. And every so often I felt, or I thought I felt a little bump from one of the dark shapes floating just below the surface. Every time I tried to get a good look at them, they scattered, and they were so close in color to the sea itself, I wasn't sure if they were even there. Whatever. Sharks are curious creatures, and yeah, sometimes they bump into people just to see what's up. I had a knife, but it was no good. If there was a shark and it wanted to kill me, it would succeed. No point in worrying about it. But it was hard going, swimming to the pier but getting pushed back with every surge of water. I was exhausted, and Mark was exhausted. We were just about to make some hard choices when a fishing boat happened to pass by. We shouted for help, and even though it took some time for him to get close to us without running us over in the tough current, we eventually hopped onto his boat and made it back to shore. They were good guys. Half of them were divers like us, though they had only been fishing from the boat that day. I asked them what they'd caught. One of them, we'll call Tom, said that he thought he got a few big bites that day, but every time he tried to reel them in, his line was slack, and the hook and sinker were gone. We ended up taking them all out for drinks to say thanks for saving our asses. It was a great chance to talk about some more experienced divers. They've been all over. Cozumel in Mexico, Rotan in Honduras, Indonesia, the Red Sea, you name it. Mark wanted to know about all the marine life they'd seen. I was more interested in hearing about the weird shit that they'd done, or that had been done to them. Tom seemed like he had stuff to say, but he kept quiet. At least until the drinks really started to flow. He told me about this experience he had, and he wouldn't say where it was, but back when he worked on an oil rig, he and the other guys would go diving on the weekends, spearfishing for fun, and to get food on the table that wasn't from a can. That rig, he said, was in the middle of nowhere, over deep water. Their sweet spot for hunting was about 80 to 100 feet down, but one time, one of his buddies dared him to go deeper. A lot deeper. He was starting to slur words by then, but I think he said something about 300 feet, ditching his weight belt and being pulled down. He definitely said that part, being pulled down by something. He wouldn't say what. Mark was buzzing pretty good by the time we headed back to our hotel. I assumed that meant no diving tomorrow, but he laughed and said, "Hell no, we're going back out to the deep at 7 a.m., just in time to catch the first boat out. I hear they're going over deep water. We can't miss that, man." I shut the lights off and got under the covers to sleep. At least I tried to. But Tom and the experiences of the day, and I remembered something else. I used to work at a company that had this guy over from Puerto Rico. One of his best friends growing up became an underwater welder, which pays damn well, especially in PR. He did that job for 15 years without hardly ever missing a day of work, until one day, he up and left. When his buddies asked him why, he said that on his last dive, he was doing his thing, making his welds and all of that, when all of a sudden his welder failed. Then the light his dive buddy was holding failed. They turned around and saw an eye, a single bloodshot eye, 12 feet from top to bottom, not 5 feet from them. It stared at each of them. They could see its pupil dart from one to the other, then back, and then it darted off into the depths. Now, the guy fixes motorbikes and does odd jobs. His buddy dropped off the face of the planet for a while, till they found out that he'd divorced his wife and left his family to live in the middle of the Sonoran Desert in Arizona. Thanks for listening, guys. Sinful here. Thanks for being patient for I think almost 6 months now to get the last part of that story. I hope that sums up the whole story for you guys. I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure, like I said, if you listen to part 2 first, go back, listen to part 1. And just to let you guys know, feel free to start emailing me your true scary Halloween stories. I want to do a huge feature this Halloween based on all of your guys' experiences. So make sure to email me that as soon as you can so I can get started on that huge video. Until we meet again, stay sinful.